Welcome to the Jay and Rob Toy Show, and we have a muscle-bound, fur-loin cloth kind of episode for you. I can't wait to get into this, but before we do, I gotta bring my heroic warrior collaborator onto the scene, Mr. Jay Bartlett. How are you doing today, sir?
Hello, Rob McCallum. I'm doing great, and this is going to be an amazing episode. This is the first toy line that really brought us together as friends. I'm so eager to talk He-Man.
This is the most powerful episode, and you kind of threw it out there already. We're talking He-Man, that Eternian warrior, the most powerful man in the universe. One episode is not going to do this entire line justice, so we're splitting it up. This time we're going to focus on three key lines, and that's the vintage release, the 2002 line, and of course, Masters of the Universe classics.
Yeah.
Let's start off with the vintage, Jay. When you think vintage He-Man, or Masters of the Universe as the brand is technically called, what are the first feelings and thoughts that you have?
That's real simple, my friend. Christmas morning and birthdays at your place. This was a line that we both got into pretty much at the exact same time and really developed our friendship. So it's very personal for me, and the iconic Mattel artwork on the back of the blister pack there, just those paintings of the figures, just so many warm memories.
Yeah, I think when you talk about packaging, this line does it all, from the play sets, which feature those giant boxes that had even, a likewise giant illustrative painting on it. It just pulled you right into the world. And the second you opened that box and took out Castle Grayskull or Snake Mountain or the Slime Pit, you felt like you had that painting as a centerpiece for your playtime. And you're right, you and I connected over this big time because there were so many characters from the original vintage line that it was hard to just have one favorite. Something like Transformers, everybody kind of wants to be Optimus Prime. And even though He-Man and Skeletor are like the chief characters in this, there are so many characters I find in the original Masters of the Universe line. You could have many favorites, so nobody ever felt left out.
I agree, and I don't remember during our play times if we ever kind of fought over He-Man. I don't think that was ever an issue. I know for one of the first times in my life, I didn't need to be that main character. I actually preferred Skeletor over He-Man, but there were so many great characters in the first wave. Man-at-Arms, Teela, Stratos. Yes, I said Stratos. Love them.
So obviously the number of characters and the design of the characters and packaging are two big things that work for the line. What else do you think really makes this line resonate and continue even to today?
Oh, the sheer size. I mean, barbarians were all the rage next to ninjas, of course. And isn't it funny how most of the molds, if not all of them, were pretty much the same. They just swapped out a few different feet and arms. I didn't mind one bit. They were 5.5 inches, which tower over Star Wars, it tower over G.I. Joe. And there was just something about that. I was a huge Conan the Barbarian fan as a kid, even though I probably shouldn't have been. So He-Man was right along my alley for that.
Yeah, it didn't bother me either that every character looked the same. It became the joke down the line that, wow, this is the exact same character as this one. Merman looks exactly like Stinkor. Mossman is exactly like Beastman.
No.
I know, it's true. It's absolutely true. They reused a lot of parts, but the imagination was still there. They had a ton of play features as well, which helped make the characters look unique. And they had a lot of just different accessories as well that went with it, so that everything felt fresh and new, and you could just grab another character and it felt like a truly new addition to your whole playtime routine.
And it combined two favorite things of mine, which is science fiction and kind of the barbarian times. And it's just wonderful. Sorcery and magic versus technology. I think it was a perfect marriage of the two, the perfect time. It was just, and it still is, absolute gold.
Now we're talking a lot about the things that worked for both of us. Not every action figure line is perfect. There's always some dark corners that you kind of shy away from when you're professing your love. In the case of Masters of the Universe, what are some of these dark corners, do you think? Where did they jump the shark a little bit in this whole line? Because it's not perfect. It's close.
Sure. I would say some of the very specific situational characters didn't really do it for me. Referencing, of course, Mechanic, and I'm sorry to all the Mechanic fans out there. I don't think he's a bad character, but I think, characters like that, like Mosquitor, I think they were starting to push the envelope there. But then you had really great characters like Many Faces, who was a theater actor, and he would change his face, and they incorporated him into the show as well.
Well, I gotta disagree a little bit. I understand what you're saying.
Of course you do.
But I think Mechaneck is a cool character. I think, the fact that he has a long neck might not be the coolest thing, but he's still a solid character, and he's got really great armor. And I think Mosquitor, one of the few characters that actually did have a different build, is a pretty cool, terrifying kind of villain as well.
Yeah.
Where it falls down for me is like Stondar and Rockon, the rock guys, the rock warriors that transform into boulders that just sit there.
Yeah.
It's not like they're a transformer where you're a robot or a car. These guys transform into stones. And that doesn't mean that they rock, they literally just sit there. The meteor orbs would be another one, which are the small little egg things that turn into like little animals as well. I just, they're trying to jump on the whole Transformers thing, and I don't think it worked, and it felt like such a departure from everything that made the line so great up until then.
I mean, in the 80s budget, there was no budget limit, I'm pretty sure, with all these toy companies. So it was just, how far can you stretch your imagination? And toy designers at Master of the Universe certainly did that, incorporating parts of Star Wars, incorporating stuff from Conan and at Transformers. There was even some G.I. Joe kind of stuff in there too. It was pretty much everything all in one, and everything, like I said earlier, was much larger. They were just thicker and bigger. And yeah, they were powerful.
Well, like I said, for the purposes of this episode, we're gonna be talking about the vintage line, 2002 and classic. So from the vintage line, we're jumping forward right to 2002, which is like 20 years kind of later, more or less, from when the original line started. Now, 2002 pays a ton of homage to not only the original line, but the original cartoon as well. What do you remember about when this line came out specifically, and what were some of your feelings about seeing those characters back on the shelf again for the first time in like forever?
2000 to 2002 was a really special time, I think, for us. We were becoming mature adults. Notice how I said mature. And we were fans of Todd McFarlane, who created wonderful adult toys in the Movie Maniacs line, and really kind of gave us the okay that, not necessarily playing with toys, but collecting toys was kind of cool, and it was okay, and it wasn't kind of this thing you had to hide away. So there was all these new cartoons, a different version of Transformers, as we've talked about before, and of course, a reboot or a soft reboot of Masters of the Universe. We were just excited to get more Transformers. We were excited to get more He-Man. And I remember the day before the Masters of the Universe cartoon came out, you and I couldn't sleep. And then after we watched that first episode, we called each other right away to discuss it.
Yeah, it was a pretty, special time to see something from your childhood thrown back at you, but through the eyes of an adult now. And yet you felt like a child all over again, recognizing, your favorite characters, but interpreted differently, because it wasn't something like Ninja Turtles or Transformers, which had always kind of been around with a presence in some form or another. Like, He-Man went away and was only kept alive through like fan communities, almost like tape traders do with concert tapes. Like, It was gone unless you specifically searched it out. And then all of a sudden, boom, Mattel is coming back in a big way. And here's what the new He-Man looks like. And here it is on the shelf. And they did not look like the vintage figures.
And I thought that was a good thing. The Four Horsemen sculpted them, and they did an immaculate job, in my opinion. You knew who the characters were at first glance, but they looked a little different. I don't want to say they looked futuristic, but they looked a lot more rugged, a lot more barbaric. Trapjaw, for instance, is a great example. He's very cyberpunk, steampunk looking. His lines aren't as streamlined and rounded. He's more rugged, just like pieces of metal grafted onto him, that kind of thing. I really like that rugged look for all the characters.
Yeah, like you said, they were recognizable, but they were different. They had matured in the same way that the audience that grew up watching it had matured, so their taste became a little bit more adult. Their menacing, monstrous features became exaggerated. There was an anime influence which was permeating all cartoons at the time, and it worked. And it wasn't like so foreign that you're like, oh, this is not my Masters. Like, it's like, okay, this is cool, I can go with it. And then came all the iterations of He-Man and Skeletor into the line. There are something crazy like 10 different versions of He-Man I think, between Spin Blade and Samurai and Ice Armor and Wolf Armor and Jungle Attack. There is a lot of different versions of He-Man and Skeletor out there. And of course, when you have one version of one, you get the version of the other.
And that's something in my tastes that I can't stand in these lines. You know, Batman is notorious for doing stuff like that, where they just underwater Batman and just all these unnecessary different armor sets. Now, we got a lot of that in the vintage line, but it wasn't like the 2002. It wasn't oversaturated. And in the vintage line, if you didn't like Thunder Punch He-Man, just don't buy him, because you still have battle armor, still have the regular He-Man. But this one went overboard, and I think it really hurt the line. It was just too many versions of He-Man and Skeletor too quickly.
Hey guys, Justice Curry here. I wanted to show you part 2 of my toy room. Let's go take a look. Figures that are clear or translucent, I have hanging all throughout my room near the light source. I'm gonna have to turn down the lights, so bear with me. We're gonna turn down the lights, and just so you can appreciate and get an understanding of all of these toys that are hanging from the ceiling that just really speak my language, that are He-Man toy lines that I like, customs, real ones from Star Wars, and I've even had to take to the skies, take to the ceiling, and start putting some mint-on card figures in a circular pattern around the chandelier. On the top section of this cabinet, you have the Kenner Superpowers in the early 80s and a full collection, which includes some of the rare ones like the Argentina Riddler, that was only available in their country. So technically, this toy display room is our guest room, so people can sleep on the pull-out couch. And this was designed as a bedroom, so there's a closet to the bedroom, which means more space to display my collection. So come on back here and we'll check out some really fun nooks and crannies. So in this area is primarily filled up with my Masters of the Universe. 80s, the childhood, the nostalgic feelings that I have playing with my He-Man figures. I love this section the most out of my collecting nooks and crannies. As you can see behind, I have the Castle Eternia with the dark side and the good side and the battle that's raging. I've set this battle scene up many times throughout the years, and they have them perfectly battling and fighting. But I want my children, I have an 11 and a 6-year-old, to also enjoy this. So that's why these are kind of in disarray and in no particular order, and some of the weapons are out of their hands. It's a full set, like every single figure that was produced in the 80s of Masters of the Universe is in here. But they come up here, they bring a stool, and they create chaos, and I like that. And then wrapping around from the top and sloping all the way back here, and even in some places up above, is a full run of mint-on card Masters of the Universe. The USS Flag has a large deck, so many of the times when my kids are having battles with their toys and my toys, they'll fill this up, or my daughter will have a wedding and the princesses with He-Man and they're getting married and all the spectators. It's really fun to see. What's really special in this corner is the G.I. Joe and the submarine right here. This was actually owned by my father. So in the 60s and 70s, the G.I. Joe figures were the 12-inch ones, and then in the early 80s, they scaled them down to the 3 3/4, which is the nostalgic ones, or the ones from my childhood. So the fact that this existed and my old man played with it is very special to me, and it's one of those things on the NFS list, the not for sale. As we continue the tour, where some of the collection has spilled out into the upstairs area, I have 3 Detolf shelves filled with some of my very favorite toy lines and action figures throughout the generations. A special cabinet is dedicated to pre-production. A lot of times with pre-production, there's only 1 or 2 in existence, and it's the stages before they were mass produced. So a lot of times you would have a figure in the sampling process through quality control that they would look it over and make any tweaks before they gave the okay for them to be made by the millions. Or some toy lines that never even got off the ground. And I have some special pieces from the G.I. Joe franchise of play sets that they made mock-ups of and just never got authorization to make them. So Muscle Men. Now Muscle Men is near and dear in my heart. Originally they started in Japan with Kinnikuman, and then the US imported them and took like 250-ish sculpts and made the Muscle Men franchise. They were available in the 28-pack as well as a 4-pack and a trash can which contained 10 wrestlers. So these were the different ways that you could purchase them, and they had some accessories such as a wrestling ring or a battling belt and even a Muscle Man board game. And there was a Nintendo game. There's all sorts of little things. My very favorite figure throughout the Muscle Man toy line was the Fox, and it wasn't just any Fox, it was the light blue color. There was a dark blue, there's a flesh, there's the greens and whatnot, but the light blue Fox that I'm holding right here was the leader. He always won, he battled all the rest of them, and I cherished him. And this is like the key to unlocking all my childhood memories. Well, thanks for joining me on this tour of my collection. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Get out of here.
We definitely don't have enough time to talk about every component of Classics. So again, I throw it to you. Where did you first come into Classics as a collector, and when do you remember hearing about it? Just tell me how it makes you feel even today.
Masters of the Universe Classics is by far the greatest toy line, again, in my opinion, for Masters of the Universe that there ever has been. This is the Kenner Star Wars formula finally put into Masters, where every single little B-side villain or character, for the most part, that showed up in the Filmation cartoon, the comics, New Adventures, they finally got their figure, and I think it was great. It's just the first time that I had heard of a subscription-based service, then you were obviously a part of that, so I got to kind of live through you. I was heavily into Star Wars then, and a few other lines, but I wasn't doing He-Man at the time, so I got to live through you and see all the great characters that you got. They were big, they were, 6-7 inches tall. They kept getting bigger, it seems, as the line went on.
This was a direct to the fans offering from Mattel, which through their new platform became MattyCollector.com, was going to allow you to pre-order an entire year's worth of figures, in which you would get 1 figure per month, plus a bonus subscription figure, which was the cost of your subscription. So you'd spend $20 a month at the beginning. Imagine that, $20 a month, $240, plus an extra $20 for subscription fee that you got back in the form of a figure if you committed just $260 for all those figures. Plus you usually got a little map or something like that that was packed in with that sub figure. That was the game changer, because it let Mattel know exactly where their numbers were, what to reliably count on in terms of fan support, and it allowed them to ask fans about what characters they wanted next and how they could plan that out.
And it really did keep Masters of the Universe alive with the fans, absolutely. And I really believe that paved the way for what we have today as far as He-Man toys go. It is a huge regret. I wish I got on that. We know a bunch of collectors in the community that have full sets. And when you see all these boxed or unboxed, just the gorgeous colors, the size of the figures, the different versions of the figures, it's quite a sight to behold.
And it also did one thing that I think is really important that often gets overlooked. It attempted to unify the canon, the story of everything that was Masters of the Universe at that point. So it took the mini comics, it took the actual Marvel Star comics, it took the cartoon stuff, and wove it together through bios that were on the back of every character. So part of the fun was getting the character and then reading the bio or reading it online to see how the story continued. And when you're invested in a narrative like that, it really pays off and really gets you kind of pulled into it. The whole line was aces across the board. But was it?
Well, there are definitely some pitfalls, and I'm talking about The one that comes to the top of my head, I should say, would be the modern collecting of classics. I tried, like I said, I'm really late to the game. So the year we were shooting Action Figure Adventure Season 1 is kind of when I dove in, and I got a few of my favorite. I remember I got Adora, was my very first one that I got. And these things have just risen in value. Now that's great if you were there from the beginning, from year 1 or year 2, but if you're trying to collect 300 plus figures now, I would say averaging what, $80 average? Man, that's really expensive. And again, that's not the community's fault, that's my fault for being late to the game, but that's one drawback for sure.
Well, it's that magical sound once more that means it's time to do a little show and tell, or what we call Action Figure Spotlight. And of course, we're talking Masters of the Universe Vintage 2002 and Classics. And I'm gonna dive right into the middle here. I'm gonna pick something from the 2002 line. Now, Jay, you already talked about Trap Jaw, so I'm gonna showcase maybe my second favorite figure, because I 100% agree with you. Trap Jaw is just amazing and menacing. But here's a cool counterpart, and that's Man-at-Arms. Now, Man-at-Arms is bigger, bulkier, sleeker as well, but he comes, chock full of muscles, cool gun, he got his signature mace, and he's just an imposing figure. And of course, for the first time, he has a mustache. The original figure never had a mustache, despite the character in the cartoon having a mustache. So I thought that was always a nice touch to see the mustache justice of Man-at-Arms. On the back, it's everything that you'd expect. This is a tri-language release, but you have, all the different cross-sell figures on here. You've got Battle Sound He-Man, of course, Battle Sound Skeletor, and then the other He-Man and Skeletor figures there. It's everything you want. There is some action features to this. The later releases would also have the chips that you could interact with, the kind of magnetic and RFID chips that would, turn the electronics on with Castle Grayskull. So Man-at-Arms, probably my second favorite figure from the 2002 line, and to find him on card like that is just a phenomenal score for me.
That's gorgeous, mate, absolutely. And we were talking about the different versions of He-Man from the 2002 line and how there are so many. Wouldn't it have been great if they put all of that into Man-at-Arms, because that would have made sense. He is the inventor, right? So you have all these different versions of Man-at-Arms. I think that would have been cool. Maybe next time.
Yeah, and I always thought, a playset that they missed out on could have been like Duncan's Lab.
Yeah.
And you could have just chocked it full of different armors or trinkets, or, the Wind Raider could, dock there. Just so much that you could do, and that character is not only a cool strategist and the scientist character, but he's also the leader, and he's also a father and a mentor. Really cool character, and that's probably my favorite iteration of Man-at-Arms that we've got to date. But what have you chosen? Have you gone vintage, 2002, or are you picking from classics?
I'm going 100% old school, the very beginning, the very first wave. I'm talking 1982, the original Lord of Destruction himself, Skeletor. Ooh. Sadly, this is not my original. This is one I got a couple years ago. My original went bye-bye, but he's back now. And let's just awe at this figure. This is the beginning. Next to He-Man, this is the body shape. This is the iconic villain that started this whole thing. And to this day, Skeletor is not necessarily my favorite, but this character brings me back to that special time when we were playing out in the front yard and we were playing Creeping Horak and all those wonderful memories. And I love the color scheme, the purples and the blues. There have been some recent updates to his face. Some say it's better, some say it's worse. For me, the iconic vintage face is just the best. The Havoc staff, and of course, one of the best features is the half of the power sword that connects with He-Man's. And it really made the line special for me, because it really made He-Man the yin and yang. You put the power swords together, and only then can you open the drawbridge and learn the secrets of Castle Grayskull.
Well, that'll do it for another episode of the Jay and Rob Toy Show. Jay, I want to throw a collector-driven question at you, and of course, we're talking Masters of the Universe, and I want to know, Jay, what figure, what character is missing from your collection that represents all three eras? So if you give me Triclops, then you're gonna get Triclops from Vintage, Triclops from 2002, and Classics. Which character do you need representations from all three lines?
Oh man, you really gotta warn me ahead of time before you ask me this stuff. Off the top of my head, one character that I've consistently loved over the years is Orko, specifically the 2002 version of Orko, the redesign. Yeah, it's gonna have to be the Oracle himself.
So you're getting Vintage Orko, 2002, and Classics, and that would be the one figure that you love from all three the most.
I will do it. Considering one of the versions of Classics, you get Prince Adam with him too, so I kind of snuck in an extra figure there, if you know what I mean.
Doesn't surprise me that you cheated in the slightest.